Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming, tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, to kick things off, I am severely under the weather, but at the same time here I've got a lot of news to go over. The news doesn't stop and I try not to either. So the first thing we're talking about here is Nintendo 64 emulation on PC with Simple64. And if you take a look at Simple64's GitHub, it says this repository has been archived by the owner. On February 14th, it is now read-only. Simple64 is officially dead. To be honest, this came as a bit of a surprise, but at the same time here, the developer is still working in the N64 emulation scene. They said they decided to focus their future efforts on a new N64 emulator called Gopher64. And we've talked about Gopher64 in previous videos. They say this project, being Simple64, has been archived and development has stopped. If Gopher64 doesn't have a feature that you are interested in, RMG, which stands for Rosalie's Mupen GUI, is another very good emulator based on Mupen 64 Plus. So Gopher64, I would say, is an exciting new N64 emulator, and it's written in Rust. And version 1.0.7 just released a few days ago. I would also argue that RMG is very similar to Simple64. They're both front ends from Mupen 64 Plus. And RMG just got a brand new update as well. It's version 0.7.5. Moving on, and we're shifting from Nintendo to PlayStation and talking about PS3 emulation with RPCS3, specifically RPCN. So if you're interested in netplay, RPCN was just updated to version 1.4.1. And they say here this update brings online support for many new games, most notably popular fighting games such as Arcana Heart, Blaze Blue, Persona, Under Night, In-Birth, and even more. And it also includes IPv6 support for signaling. If you are curious about RPCN, I do recommend checking out their compatibility list. It shows what games are working, what games have issues, and what games are just flat out not working. And you may be surprised here with all of the games that are listed as working. And continuing to talk about PlayStation 3 emulation, next up we're talking about the highly controversial PS3 emulator on Android known as APS3e. Now, we talked about this one in the last video. The controversial part about this is that this emulator used RPCS3 code, as well as Vita3K code, and locked code behind a paywall, which violated licensing. Anyways, here it appears that APS3e is dead, or at least the GitHub is closed for now. Unfortunately, I don't have more details for you about this one just yet. I haven't been able to contact the developer to find out exactly what happened here. I'm assuming if there was just no paywall from the get-go, there wouldn't be any sort of issue with this emulator. It was very weird that they stuck the source code, the borrowed or stolen source code, behind a paywall. It made absolutely no sense. We're going to have to wait and see as to the future of APS3e. Maybe it'll live on in another GitHub. Maybe it'll just be reborn under a different name. I don't know yet. One thing I do know, though, is that the GitHub going down is kind of against what the developers seem to be intending. Because if you take a look at a recent Q&A, they said they planned on updating it in the next few days. So we'll have to wait and see here, because taking a GitHub down is kind of the opposite of updating an emulator. I don't know what's going to happen here, but if you know, let me know in the comments below. Next up, we're talking about one of my favorite multi-system emulators out there, and that is Ares. Ares is an absolutely fantastic multi-system emulator. It's very easy to use and set up and works very well. And I find this one to be highly compatible with ROM hacks and translations and that kind of stuff. Anyways, Ares just got a brand new update. Now, just a couple of weeks ago, we talked about Ares releasing version 1.4.2, and they've just released version 1.4.3, a little ahead of schedule, or maybe sooner than we would have expected. And it seems that version 1.4.3 fixes a few bugs. They state here that this is a priority fix, and this version fixes a regression that caused Super Game Boy and other add-on carts for the Super Famicom SNES to not load properly. If you are using Ares, you may want to check out to see if you're using the latest version. And speaking about Game Boy stuff, next up here we're talking about PyBoy, which is a Game Boy and Game Boy Color emulator written in Python. And PyBoy just got a brand new update. So at the time of filming, version 2.5.0 is the latest update. And this one is a pretty big update. On top of a bunch of fixes and improvements, there's some brand new stuff here. There's improved multi-threading support. The sound is no longer in beta and no longer muted by default. It also seems that PyBoy got a little bit more accurate. So they say here if you depend on exact timing of a frame, something like a specific start block in Tetris, then expect these to have changed. These changes improve emulation correctness. Next up here, we're talking about FiveM. Now, if you mod stuff in Grand Theft Auto 5, you're probably very familiar with FiveM. FiveM was purchased by Rockstar back in 2023, and it seems that FiveM has been on a downward spiral since. There's a site here called FiveM.team, and it's titled The Fall of FiveM, The Untold Story of FiveM. What happened at Rockstar? Why does FiveM suck now? What is the future of FiveM? And things do not look good. There are a lot of people out there thinking that this is true, and if it is true, this is pretty damning to FiveM. This article is huge. There's a lot here. There's a lot of screenshots. There's a lot of back and forth, including direct conversations. At a very high level here, I read through this and I do recommend checking it out. And like everything we talk about, link will be in the description below right at the bottom. Anyways, here at a very high level, it just seems there's a whole bunch of mismanagement and inexperience and frankly immaturity regarding the entire thing. It's a crazy story, and it does seem that the founder and key developers were kicked off the project and the people left in charge didn't really know what to do with it or were not capable to move it forward. Additionally, it seems that some of the people they brought in afterwards were the source of the GTA 5 source code leak. This article is crazy, and I do recommend giving it a read because it's wild on what's been posted here. And as for whether or not I think this is real or fake, I usually say where there's smoke, there's fire, and there's a whole lot of smoke here and a whole lot of evidence of fire, at least perceived evidence of fire. I'm assuming that this is real and there's probably more truth to it than not. We'll have to wait and see if it's proven not to be true, but at the same time here, the amount of evidence that has been posted, assuming it hasn't been manufactured, is pretty damning. And on a side note here, that article has raised a few eyebrows, especially from the Liberty City Preservation Project team who were bringing Liberty City to Grand Theft Auto 5, the project that was supposedly taken down by Rockstar. Anyways, it seems that the takedown request may have been fake. Unfortunately, I don't have firm confirmation as to whether or not that takedown request was real or fake, but it does seem that there's going to be more to this story as time moves on. Let me know your thoughts about this whole FiveM scandal or controversy or whatever you want to call it in the comments below. And speaking about Grand Theft Auto stuff and also modding, next up we're talking about Grand Theft Auto 6. And it seems as if Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to be very focused on community and modding and all of that stuff. Think Roblox, but Grand Theft Auto 6. So based on this report here, Rockstar Games has been in discussions with top Roblox and Fortnite creators, as well as dedicated GTA content creators about the potential to create custom experiences inside the upcoming game. So it seems they're setting it up to be a big metaverse platform. We're going to have to wait and see on this one moving forward right now, and it is currently just a rumor. But at the same time here, that concept does make sense and would probably make Rockstar a lot of sense. We'll have to wait and see here, but let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. Would you be excited about Grand Theft Auto 6 being set up in a way like this to support content creators and generate additional content for the game? And speaking about games that are releasing, next up here we're talking about games that are, well, it's the exact opposite. We're talking about games that are shutting down. And it seems that Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles on iOS has reached end of life. Not because the developers don't want to support it anymore, but it just seems there's a bug they can no longer fix. So they say here, as of January 24th, 2025, we have been receiving reports of customers unable to access the additional content they purchased for the iOS version of Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles. This issue extends to the full paid version of the game, which allows the users to play through all dungeons. This issue is due to changes made in the in-app purchases model. Further investigation revealed that we are unable to completely fix the bug and implement the new changes, making it unlikely to resume service for the game. So fortunately here, it does seem they're issuing some refunds. Unfortunately, it's just for people who purchase content after January 2024 or later. And it seems there is a specific list of stuff that is going to be refunded here. List of content eligible for refund, so I guess it's not necessarily guaranteed. But anyways, there's 15 items in total, including the full version of the game. To me, this is kind of crazy that they're unable to fix an issue that was introduced, and I'm wondering if they just don't have the development team or the talent in order to do it. And that may be a product of downsizing the development force. Maybe they just don't have the resources to allocate because they're focused on other stuff. I really don't know here. If you play Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles on iOS, or if you've played it, let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below, and if you think this is a big loss to iOS. And speaking about stuff being discontinued, next up we're talking about My Nintendo Gold Points. And if you were collecting gold points, you're really not going to like this news. Or rather, if you are looking forward to collecting more gold points, because Nintendo is shutting down the gold point service. So they say here, beginning at 9:30 p.m. on March 24th, users will no longer be able to earn My Nintendo Gold points. Gold points will no longer be earned on digital purchases on Nintendo eShop after March 24th. For physical games released on March 24th or afterwards won't be eligible for gold points. But they say for physical games released before March 24th, you've got 12 months to redeem them. Now, it does seem that that's 12 months from the original release date of the game. So if 12 months has passed since that game has been released, I think the gold points are no longer valid. On top of that, they say all earned gold points will continue to be valid and redeemable for up to 12 months after they are issued. Next up, we're talking about a very interesting ROM hack called Super Mario Bros. CD. If you ever wondered what Super Mario Bros. Would look like as a CD-based game, well, you may now have your answer. There's a brand new demo that has just been released, and yes, it does work on SNES hardware. Video Game Esoterica has put out a brand new video showcasing gameplay of this game, and I think this game looks pretty darn cool. Let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below and if you'd be interested in playing Super Mario Bros. CD. And speaking about demos, if you're a fan of The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening or The Legend of Zelda Link to the Past or a whole bunch of older Zeldas, you may be a fan of a brand new demo that has just been released on Steam, and it's for the Isle of Reveries. This is an indie game. It hasn't released just yet, but a Kickstarter is on the way starting March 1st. Unfortunately, I don't have more details for you on the overall size of the game and what the tiers are, the pricing, the release date, or anything like that just yet. I don't even know how much they're asking for because the Kickstarter hasn't launched. Once the Kickstarter launches, we'll know more details about this one, but based on the fact that they've already got a Steam store page and already have a demo out there, I'm assuming this is a higher chance of being successful considering they do have a proof of concept. Let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. Next up here, we're talking about limited run games, and it just seems that limited run games can't catch a break. I don't know if this is a fault of limited run management or what is going on here, but it just seems that two of the recent NES releases could damage the console, and that's what's being reported, and I guess that's what Limited Run has also said. So if you've purchased either Rugrats or Pio Pow for the NES and wanted to use it, you may just want to leave those games in box and never use them in your NES. It may damage the NES here, and Limited Run are apparently testing even more games to see if there are more issues out there. And this is not a good look, again, for a Limited Run, and obviously not great for collectors who wanted to collect these things. I think this is going to severely devalue them. And also for people who just wanted to play them. They can't now. Well, you can, but you risk damaging your NES. It seems as if for people who have pre-ordered these games and haven't received them yet, they have some options. They say here customers who haven't received their order and don't want to wait for a new cartridge can contact Limited Run for a full refund. Or I guess you can just wait until they have the cartridge remanufactured. I don't know how long it's going to take them to remanufacture those cartridges. And for people who have already received it, they'll be receiving a brand new cartridge once they're remanufactured. Next up here is some surprising and a little bit confusing news. It appears that a bunch of people at Marvel Rivals have been laid off, even though the game is ultra successful. And it's being reported that the director has been laid off. However, it's also being reported that the director is still there. So it seems as if the overall game director is still there, but the game director of the R&D team based in the US is no longer there. And that's a completely different title and job altogether. Anyways, it just seems there's a huge global restructuring and the US R&D team just didn't make it, or at least a large portion of them. Now, I don't know about you, but this is really surprising to me given the fact that Marvel Rivals is ultra popular. I mean, over on Steam, it's the 4th most played game right now. It is highly adopted, it is very active, and I think this game does hopefully have a bright future. Although maybe not now. I'm not quite sure on how the internal team is structured and how things are structured moving forward. Maybe they're just banking on this to continue its popularity regardless of the development team size. To me, the games industry these last few years have been super weird in terms of overall job security. I mean, with this, it doesn't matter if the game is good or bad. It just seems that game developer job security is just not there altogether. I'm wondering if companies are just going to start ramping up developers in order to develop and release a game and then just get rid of the team altogether once the game is out there. Who knows here moving forward? It's just, to me, this is not a good look. Next up, we're talking about WinDurango, which is an Xbox One emulator or Xbox One compatibility layer for Windows. and WinDurango just got a brand new update. So at the time of filming, WinDurango Alpha 3 codename Manhattan is the latest update, and they say this is the third official release of the WinDurango Alpha. This game is able to play Minecraft Xbox One Edition. On top of that, here they added initial support for the escapists, and there's a whole bunch of bug fixes. This one is still pretty early on in terms of overall development, but seems pretty promising. And last up here, this is some pretty big news. It's being reported that Niantic is selling Pokemon Go, and selling it for around $3.5 billion, a huge price tag. The purchaser is Scopely Interactive, and this may not just apply to Pokemon Go, but may apply to stuff like Pikmin Bloom, as well as Monster Hunter Now, and even more. We're going to have to wait a little bit to see the final details of the overall purchase, but if this is true, it appears that the whole Niantic gaming division will be purchased by Scopely. Anyways, I have no idea what that means for the overall future of Pokemon Go, but I'm assuming that will inject quite a bit of life into it. We'll have to wait and see. A lot of people are saying this may be a very good thing for the future of Pokemon Go. Let me know your thoughts about this one. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and the legendary one fluff. We talked about a bunch today. Feel free to discuss anything we talked about in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button. Check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate. Save your state. And I'll see you tomorrow. Maybe.